Hello, I'm Ziad Sariuddin, Manager of Technical Marketing for the Identity Services Engine product, and I would like to take some time today to go over a demonstration covering network visibility. Network visibility is a big topic, so we will try to contain the conversation to the visibility we get as folks connect to the network. Identity Services Engine uses contextual data to determine the type of network access one should be granted. This means before we allow folks on the network, we need to know who they are, what type of devices they're using, what network they're coming from, time of day, and whether the device they are using is compliant with the company endpoint compliance policy. Based on this information, we then determine what kind of access we give them. The wealth of information we get as folks and devices try to connect to the network gives us a great picture of what's on the network at any given time. Also, equally important, we can share all this contextual data with other product and solutions such as SIEM and threat defense vendors using PXGrid. Okay, so let's get on with the demo. For today's demo, I will be using a good-sized network where we have ISE installed in a distributed environment. This is the ISE dashboard. Its main purpose is to give you a summary of what's happening on the network. So let's walk through each element on this dashboard and discuss what we are seeing. We will also drill down into some areas that give us more data, such as device distribution, authentication methods used, reported issues, etc. All right, so the top part of the menu gives us metrics information on endpoints. Starting from left, we see that we have more than 47,000 devices that have been on this network at some point in time. These are the endpoints that are in the ISE database. The second one is about active endpoints. What this is really saying is that we have about 1,500 devices that are currently on the network at this time. We also see that you have this graph right here, and what this graph gives us information on what's happening on the last 24 hours. So if I click on one of these bars, I can see that from 9 to 10, we had 249 endpoints join the network, and a couple hours later, we see more endpoints connect to the network. From authenticated guests perspective, we currently have no guests on the network, and that's why this number is 0. Profiled endpoints, here again we can click and get information by the hour in terms of what's being profiled. We have 3,000 devices that have been profiled on this network. And the last one on the right is the posture compliance, and unfortunately we see that this number is low. We have 27% compliance, meaning only 27% of the devices on the network are compliant with the endpoint compliance policy. Now this is an experimental network that we use for testing, so that should be okay. The next thing is the system summary. It is an important one. And here we see a list of all the ISE nodes on the network. The color green indicates that the nodes are healthy, and I can get more info on CPU, memory, and authentication load. Different icons are used for these nodes to differentiate their persona. So for example, we have some personas here starting with the administration, so we get a couple of administration nodes, and we got a couple of monitoring nodes, and the rest of the nodes are the policy decision points. Those are the ones that execute the policy from authentication and authorization perspective. And also we see here a couple of PXGrid nodes as well. The next thing to look at is alarms. So we are receiving a good number of alarms. Notice that you can configure ISE to send these alarms to recipients via email and other methods. You should be able to tweak the configuration in ISE in terms of what alarms to trigger. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these alarms, starting with misconfigured supplicant detected. And when I click on that, it gives me a report on the issues with some of the endpoints having problem with supplicants, and it tells me the detail on the endpoint and the failure reason, also the resolution, what we should be doing to fix the problem, and on the bottom gives me information in terms of the endpoints that have been impacted on this. In some cases I actually do have the information on the end user, so that person can be contacted to fix the issue. So we can go ahead and scroll down and see through the list things such as high authentication latency. Here, for example, external MDM server connection failure. I can click on that. This will tell me what the issue is. Unable to talk to the MDM server using the ISE MDM API. The next topic I want to talk about is authentications. So I can go ahead and unpin that whole box and look at it by itself. Okay, so we get about 6,000 authentications passed, 3,000 failed. Again, this is an experimental network. The reason why we're seeing a lot of failed authentication is possibly due to some chatty supplicants. From an authentication distribution perspective, we can show that in many different ways, starting with the identity source. So we're authenticating against AD. We are authenticating against internal endpoints. This is when we do, for example, profiling. And we're authenticating against internal users. This is possibly for guests. Guest accounts get created in ISE itself. We also here maybe traffic for VPN. We can also authenticate based on the identity group. This is more like authenticating Apple versus Samsung devices. Another example is network devices. Okay, so here we're seeing devices authenticate through the ASA in the case of VPN, some coming through wired, other ones through wireless. We can also do this based on location, but for now let's go ahead and take a look at the last one, which is failure reason. And if we were to take a look at some of these entries, in particular EPTLS, we see that the error for EPTLS is due to an unknown CA. And if we can go ahead and click on one of these bars, we see that this has impacted 3 folks. We could actually drill down and get reports on that, but for right now we'll skip. Okay, so the next thing I want to take a look at is profile activity. This gives us information of how devices were profiled. That it gives us percentages on the number of devices that are Android and maybe a breakdown. That's Samsung and Samsung Galaxy phone, etc. This is a bigger chunk, maybe an Apple device and so on. The other area is posture compliance. Here it tells us the breakdown based on the type of devices that being postured. These are Mac OS devices and different type of Mac OS devices. A great way to get visibility on the type of endpoints on the network is by clicking on total endpoints from the dashboard. And this is going to give us a place where we can do filtering based on many different things. For example, from a profiling perspective, go ahead and show me all the Microsoft workstations that are on the network. And it does that. So here I got 354, and if I click on connected, I'm gonna get only the connected ones. Starting with ISE 2.0, under identities now, you can get a report, a pie chart report on the distribution of endpoints on the network. Also, it gives you visibility of how those were profiled using different policy services nodes. You can do this for endpoints and also users as well. Operations Radius Live Log is really the place that pretty much catches everything that tries to connect to the network, whether successful or not. Here we have a lot of information in terms of the identity of the user, MAC address, type of device they're using, the policy, and there are so many more fields that you can add in here. But you get the picture. This has really got a lot of visibility information in this specific screen. The last thing I want to talk about is the search tool, and you can get to it from the menu up here. You can enter here an endpoint, a MAC address, or anything. For example, I want to go ahead and try my user ID, and it goes ahead and it finds my user ID, and then it comes back giving me information on the devices that I have on the network. Two of them are currently on the network, the Apple iPad and the Apple MacBook, but my phone is currently not on the network. And if I click on the Apple iPad, I can get a lot of information on that. For example, that it has been authenticated and authorized currently on the network. It's been profiled as an Apple iPad. And I can get more details on endpoint information. From an authentication perspective, we see that username is right there. It's been a registered device. This is an iPad that went through BYOD registration. And a lot of more information. I can also look at the information of how it's been profiled. And if I scroll down, it gives me data such as it's been profiled using the user agent. And that's pretty much concludes our demo. Thank you for watching.